Hi, this is Pipesim Python Toolkit for beginners. In this video, you will find information how to work with Pipesim simulation settings. For this video, I use an example CSN313 from case study. I loaded this model in my session and saved in the temporary folder, so I can override this model. Let's go to Pipesim model and open simulation settings. Here we have several tabs, and I'm going to focus on flow correlations, heat transfer, and environmental. For flow correlations, we have two options, use global or use local. When use local is selected, there is a table with detailed correlations for each branch in this model. We can see that override property is not selected for all of them, so the default property, default settings are used for all branches, and there is no need to select use global. So what I'm going to do in my script is to change and use global for flow correlations. For heat transfer, we can see the same. Override is not selected, so I'm also going to use global. And then for environmental, we have different properties. I'm going to change just one of them, for example. Temperature, air data, I'm going to replace 60 and use 50 instead. So let me close this, go back to the code, and see how we can get the data model simulation. For this, we need to use model, sim settings, and we can output as a dictionary. Let me use more accurate human-readable format. So for key and value in model sim settings items, I'm going to print these values. So I'm going to print key and then value. And the output shows us different properties, what we can set from sim settings. So ambient temperature is on the first line, and I'm going to replace it. And then we have at the bottom, we have the use global flow correlations with value false. It means that local flow correlations are used. And the similar thing happens with use global heat transfer. So I need to replace these values. Let me start from updating ambient temperature. So I'm going to use model sim settings, and now I need to pass the parameters, simulation settings, and ambient temperature. And the value will be 50. Then I need to change the values for global flow correlation, use global flow correlation. But before I do it, let me show you what we can extract from the local correlations. I'm going to use model sim settings again, and then I will tap get flow correlations and use empty brackets. As the result, we've got this complex dictionary where we have the keyword is the name of the branch. It starts from the default settings, and then we have the branch name well2 and other branches. They're hidden here. And for each of the branch we have settings. For example, this type, global, and then vertical multi-phase source, vertical multi-phase correlations, and all other properties, including the factors. And the same we have for well2. If we want to focus on certain branch, we can pass in the brackets the branch name. So I'm going to use W2, and then I've got the response focused on this well2 output. And we can overwrite this value, of course. I'm not going to do it right now, so my target is to use global. So I need to follow the same idea, model sim settings, and then pass parameters, simulation settings, use global flow correlations, and then I will pass true because I'm going to use the global settings correlations. And then I need to do the same. Let me just copy the same line and replace parameter. This time I'm going to use global heat transfer and use true. And we need to save the model. And I'm ready to check my changes in user interface. So I'm going to user interface, open the model again, no save, then simulation settings, and we can see that flow correlations is selected use global. For heat transfer, use global as well. And for environmental, the temperature is 50 right now. So what else we can do here? We can change, for example, the settings for global correlation. So for vertical flow, right now the source is Baker-Jardine and the correlation Hedigan and Brown. I want to replace it. I'm going to use the Olga S correlation. And for heat transfer, for example, I'm going to override U-value multiplier and use another value, not 1. So let me go back to the code. And then, how can I get the value from the simulation settings? If I want to get the global correlation, I have function global flow correlation. And this global flow correlation returns me the settings. I'm going to pass it to variable correlation. And now I need to override property in the correlation. For this, I need to use parameters. So correlation, parameters, flow correlation, then multiphase, and then I'm going to write vertical. And then first I need to change the source for this correlation, and I need to select from the list of the sources available for correlations. For this purpose I need to use constants, then multiphase flow correlation source, and then select from the list. I'm going to use the Olga. So I changed the source for flow correlation, and I'm going to use the similar structure to override the correlation name itself. So instead of the vertical source, this time I'm going to use vertical correlation, and I need to select from the list of the correlations. Again, constants, multiphase flow correlation this time, and then we have the Olga S. From this package, I'm going to use, for example, 23.1 three-phase correlation. So the value is applied. And I need to apply these changes correlation back to the model. For this, I need to use model, sim settings, then global flow correlation, and I need to pass dictionary as an argument for this method. Okay, and then save the model. Let's go back to the user interface and check that everything is in place. Go to simulation settings, and you can see that the source is Olga S now, and the correlation is Olga S 23.1 three-phase. So the next thing I'm going to update is to change the heat transfer multiplier. For this purpose, I need to go back to the model, sim settings, global, and global heat transfer option. Let me see what we have here. We have U value multiplier 1. So I'm going to return it and assign to the heat variable. And then I'm going to change this heat variable and use parameters, heat transfer option, and then select U multiplier and use the value 1.5, for example. So the value is updated, and I need to apply back this heat. So I'm going to use model, sim settings, global heat transfer option, and pass this heat dictionary as an argument to this method. And I need to save the model and check my changes in the user interface. So let's go back to the user interface, open it again, simulation settings, heat transfer, and we see that U value was changed and 1.5 is used. So you can follow the same idea to change other properties. But I'm going to close the model and finish this video.